Rashomon, a 1915 Japanese period psychological thriller film directed by Akira Kurosawa, based on Ryunosuke Akurugawa's short stories In a Grove and the eponymous Rashomon. Hamlet, an English tragedy written for the stage by William Shakespeare in the early 17th century, based on a figure in medieval Scandinavian legend. What can these two stories possibly have in common? Stories from opposite sides of the globe. One takes place in Japan, the other in Denmark. One was a book turned into a movie, the other was a myth made into a play. One is about a samurai and his wife, the other is about a prince and his uncle. Seemingly, these tales are worlds apart from each other. But that's what you think. Before we get into their eerie, in more ways than one, similarity, let's break down the plot. Rashomon tells of a crime witnessed by 4 different people, the murder of a man and the rape of his wife. Each perspective is told to the other characters and to the audience, and all seem to have only the most major details in common. None of the stories are consistent. A murder or a suicide, a rape or adultery. So really, there is no way to determine which telling is the truth. Meanwhile, over in Denmark, young Prince Hamlet's father, the king, has just passed away. His uncle comes to power, taking the throne and marrying his mother. And all the while, the young prince is 100% certain that something is rotten here in his state, and eventually sets out to get his revenge for the murder, rather than a simple death, of his father. Already you can see there is one thing in common, a murder.
Aye, there's the rub.
But here's the rub. That's nothing interesting at all. Many a story has murder, and you can't go comparing crime drama to sci-fi horror just because both genres have a death now and again. There's another thing to it, though. How does Prince Hamlet find out it's a murder, exactly? Why, it's a well-known fact that it's his father's ghost that comes back to tell him how he was poisoned by his brother. It's his father's ghost that tells Hamlet to go and take revenge for his sake.
Now, Hamlet, here, 'tis given out that sleeping in mine orchard a serpent stung me. So the whole ear of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. But know thou, noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown.
In Rashomon, something very similar happens. There are 4 versions of the story. One is from the bandit who maybe committed the crime. One is from the wife who's maybe the victim of the crime. One is from the woodcutter who said he saw nothing of the crime. And one is from the samurai who died as part of the crime. He's dead. How can he tell his story? His ghost speaks through a medium as 2 other characters listen on.
現在縛られている夫の前でなんと盗人に返事をしたか。
どこへでも連れて行ってください。
妻は確かにこう言った。しかし妻の罪はそれだけではない。それだけならこの闇の中で今ほど我は苦しみはしまれん。
あの人を殺してください。私もあの人は生きていてはあなたとは一緒に帰れません。あの人を殺してください。
In both stories, the ghost of the deceased comes back to speak for how he died. In addition, in both, there is a character he's speaking to or through specifically, the medium, or Hamlet himself, while 3 onlookers listen on, the unseen judge, the woodcutter, and the priest, Horatio, Bernardo, and Marcellus. But that's still not all. Both the king and the samurai had a wife, and in both stories, though in Rashomon it's hard to tell whether she went with the bandit willingly or not, shame is cast on the wife, the woman who dared to forsake her husband. The wife is called a whore. The queen is called incestuous.
She married. Oh, most wicked speed. To post with such dexterity.
to incestuous sheiks.
Neither stories treat either woman as a positive figure, even showing both as uncaring towards the final fate of their husbands, if not part of it in Rashomon's case. The most important part of the similarities, however, is the treatment of the ghost as an unreliable source. In Hamlet, the prince doesn't believe the ghost right away. Hamlet sets out to prove his father's words.
The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
The word of the ghost in Rashomon is not automatically believed either. None of the characters' testimonies ever ring as quite true, always uncertain, no way to prove it, and no exception is made for the ghost's word. Dead men don't lie. Or do they? And that's an interesting thing, in fact. That's not the existence of the ghost that the most doubt is cast on, oh no. The doubt is cast on the fact of whether or not the ghost is telling the truth. To wrap it up, there's one final question. Why do these similarities take place? It's no mere coincidence. They come about as ways to address the concept in search of the truth, a major theme in both Hamlet and Rashomon. The main characters in each are after a concrete answer, a definite exposure, not standing for a world where lies and obscurity are what prevail. In Hamlet's case, the truth does indeed out as he overhears the confession of his uncle. But Rashomon stews in its ambiguity all the way until the end, provoking the viewing minds to wonder, what really did happen in that grove?